This episode is sponsored by the Hollywood Casino at Charlestown Races in West Virginia. October entertainment includes Easton Corbin on the 11th and Dirty Honey on the 12th. Plus, don't miss a minute of football season. Join us in the sportsbook with a tailgate party on October 27th. Visit HollywoodCasino.com to see how you can reserve your package. Must be 21 to enter the casino floor and attend a show. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER. Welcome to the newest episode of Beyond the Fame with Jason Fraley. I'm your host, Jason Fraley, picking the brains of the top filmmakers, musicians, and artists of our time. Comedian Larry Wilmore performs live at the Birchmere in Alexandria, Virginia on October 14th. He joined me to preview the show and reflect on his career, including The Bernie Mac Show, Insecure, The Daily Show, and The Nightly Show with Larry Wilmore. Hey, Larry Wilmore. Hey, thank you so much for coming on the show.
Oh, it's my pleasure. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, we're talking because you're coming to the Birchmere in Alexandria, Virginia, historic spot, on October 14th, and we're calling it the Comedy, Magic, and Murica Tour, apostrophe America. Now, the comedy self-explanatory, it's a stand-up show, but wait, the magic? Are you doing magic?
Well, it's not. Yeah, so a lot of people don't know that I'm also a magician. I've been doing it since I was a kid. I'm a member of the famous Magic Castle here in Hollywood. And I've been performing there for years. And people come see and say, Larry Wilmore, I never knew you did magic, And so I thought I'd put together a show where it's basically a magic show that has commentary about America in it, the stuff that people know that I'm doing. So there's a lot of surprises in it, things that people normally wouldn't associate with me doing, like I'll call it mentalism, that type of stuff, magic. And it's all under that theme of America, that type of thing. So it's really a fun show. People are going to have a lot of fun.
I think that is hilarious. All right.
It's something different. It's something different out there is what I'm doing here.
So it's like bringing, when you say mentalism, is that like really bringing in is that like really audience interaction type stuff, I'm assuming?
Yeah, tons of audience interaction. So be prepared to come on stage and prepare. But I'm going to be challenging people in different ways with things that are just, it's going to be hard for them to understand. Like, what did I just see? There's going to be some things like that. I do one routine where I actually take away someone's free will on stage.
Really?
That's what I mean. Like something like that, where I talk about free will versus fate. Because, most of us believe in free will, but a lot of people believe in fate. And in fact, the world up until, let's say, the last 100 years, mostly believed in fate, right. That your destiny was written in the stars.
Yeah.
So I do a little experiment where I take away their free will and put it into fate. And it's real. And everybody's looking, go, whoa, what's going on here? That's a little bit of a tease. So that's what I mean, Jake. That's the kind of stuff that I'm doing on stage, things that challenge us to think a different way. And then in between, like some of the effects, I'll talk about politics a little bit. I'll talk about culture, that type of stuff. Things that my basic message is, I really feel there's more that unite us than divide us. We have more in common as Americans. It's when we become Americans that we get messed up.
Yeah, when we lose the A part and we add
exactly
when it becomes apostrophe America, rah rah America, then we get into a little trouble. Okay, and this is going to be like, I assume this is your last time coming through the Washington area before this crazy heated election. I mean, we're only a couple weeks away.
It's crazy. Who would have thunk that this was going to happen this year?
A couple months ago, the race looked completely different.
Different. Completely. I mean, I'm a Democrat.
Years have grown back. So much has happened.
I mean, worms have already worked their way through brains already. They're on the second helping of brains.
Yeah. And then on the other side, the candidate has completely stepped down and the vice president's coming. Like, so we couldn't imagine it's a completely different.
I mean, it's like those old wrestling matches, where you tag in and tag out, type of thing. Who would have thought we'd run the presidential election like that? Like, I'm done. Come on in. Okay, you got me. Okay, all right, let's go. You know what I mean?
That's hilarious. Well, awesome. Yeah, I mean, it's So if you want to talk about the state of the race and get some commentary on the election coming up, this is Larry Wilmore's your guy. This is going to be great. Awesome. Well, a lot of people don't know that you took away my free will at the beginning of this interview. It's all faded now. And so now I'm just kind of going with the flow of this right now.
Freestyling,
I'm
that's what
freestyling.
happens.
Well, what I usually try to do when I have the legends on, I like to tease the show at the top, but I also love to give them a little sense of your resume is ridiculously amazing.
Oh,
Like
thank
I
you.
want to tell people, like a lot of people maybe remember the Daily Show and some of the stuff, but I want to hit, if
Sure.
you don't mind, at least in brief, some of the highlights over
Sure.
the years, if you don't mind. So I
Absolutely.
know you were born in LA in '61. Happy almost birthday. I know it's the 30th,
Yeah, thank you. Coming up.
Halloween Eve, I guess. Um,
Yes.
but who are your
Take off your
comedy idols?
mask, Larry. Halloween's over. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. But yeah, who were your comedy idols growing up?
My first one was a comedian named Flip Wilson. Some kind of forgotten now, but he was like the first black comic to have his own comedy variety show. Nat King Cole had like a musical variety show in the 50s. He was like the first black person to have it. But Flip Wilson was like the first comedian, and I was a kid, and oh man, he was a god. He was so funny.
Yeah.
He did this character named Geraldine where he would,
Yeah.
put on dress and that type of thing, and had a lot of catchphrases. And that's when, the idea of making people laugh even just entered my head. So he was really my idol growing up. But I was into everybody from the Marx Brothers to Monty Python, Richard Pryor, of course. There was nobody bigger than Richard Pryor. God, man, we used to, before he was really big, big, like in our neighborhood, this shows you how old I am. So like somebody would have one of his albums and we would like sneak over to the person's house to listen to a Richard Pryor album because it was for, you were a kid, you couldn't listen to that stuff, the stuff that he was saying. It was, man, I can't believe that we did that. Some of the stuff he talked about was so outrageous back then.
That was the taboo stuff.
Exactly. I don't even think I could say it on this podcast, some of the stuff he talked about on those albums. And we
Probably not.
listened to his kids.
Yeah,
So
exactly.
those were my idols growing up, the people that I kind of looked to. But I had so many influences because I've always loved comedy. I always loved laughing at things and then it turned into making people laugh too.
Yeah. Oh, you've done it so much over the years. Yeah, I think you went to college to study theater and dropped out to pursue
Yeah,
acting and stand up. And I believe one of your early gigs, right? Weren't you and your brother were writers on In Living Color? I think you
that's
shared
right.
that was your first like shared Emmy along the writing staff. But
Yeah.
remind us some of the sketches you might have had a hand in.
Man, that was so much fun. So one of the more famous episodes we did was, and Keenan kind of changed how the Super Bowl kind of operates because they used to have like marching bands during halftime at the Super Bowl,
Oh
things
yeah,
like that.
yeah, yeah.
It was really boring. So in Living Color, it was a very popular show, and we thought, what if we did a Super Bowl? I didn't come up with this. This was Keenan's idea. What if they did an In Living Color Super Bowl special during the halftime of the show that was live? So during halftime, we did a live show and people turned away from the Super Bowl to watch in Living Color and
Wow.
then went back to the Super Bowl after that. So I actually wrote a lot of sketches that were on that episode. There was one, we had a sketch with, we called it Men on Film, where it was Damon and David Allen Greer. There was two snaps, and they would do reviews of the films and they were reviewing football. And it was really funny. And, you know, I wrote a lot that was on that particular episode. That's the one that I remember the most because it actually changed the way Super Bowls were done. The next year, they had Michael Jackson for the Super Bowl halftime.
Coincidence? I think not. Free will, or was the NFL fated?
Free will or fate.
Yep,
Exactly. We
exactly.
controlled their fate. There
And
you
by
go.
the way, when you keep dropping Keenan, it's Keenan Ivory Wayans, not
Yes.
Keenan Tom. These kids these days hear Keenan
Yes.
and love Keenan Thompson.
I
He's one great
know.
too. But yeah,
There's like two Keenan Titans now,
the original.
right?
This was back when Keenan Thompson was doing the knuckle puck in the Mighty Ducks. We're talking about the OG Keenan.
Yeah,
uh,
and the real OG Keenan is Keenan Wynn. So there you
Oh,
go.
well, there you go.
Even
There you
from,
go. There's predating ones. All right.
yeah.
Well, we can't hit all this up, but I want to remind folks you wrote for Fresh Prince, Jamie Foxx,
Yes, back in the
created
day.
an acclaimed animated series, The PJs, all that stuff. Tell me about the Bernie Mac show and creating that. You won an Emmy and a Peabody, I even think. This was like
Yeah.
2001 to 2006. Gosh, rest in peace. But like, man, a titan of comedy, like
Yeah.
the likes of which we will probably never see again. Unbelievable human being.
Bernie's another guy who he really tapped into what was unique about him and his point of view and his take on the world, which is how I was able to do that show of keying in on what's his point of view. And part of what that show was, like I always tell people, that show was very simple in my mind. It was two sentences. Children are terrorists, I don't negotiate with terrorists. Like that's what the show was, the Bernie Mac show.
That's your guiding mantra right
That's
there.
my guiding mantra. And it's in the DNA. You could pick up any scene from it, and
Yeah,
that's in the DNA of that scene.
yeah,
You're a terrorist, but I don't negotiate with terrorists.
that's
It's in
it.
any scene. And that's Bernie. But Bernie had a gift. He was not only funny as a stand-up, he's one of those comedians, he could really emote so simply. And if you watch his movies or watch anything he's acting in, Bernie doesn't have to do a lot. He doesn't need a funny line. He doesn't need a joke. He can just look at you and he can, do his head, the way that he used to do or that type of thing. And his whole
Yeah.
body, like if you look at that Def Comedy Jam thing that really made him famous, his whole body was just so funny. Which I ain't scared of you, and he would start dancing like that. So everything about Bernie was just really funny. But he was a real thoughtful guy too. We used to have really good conversations, just real good conversations, and some of it was just about we might just be talking about the scene or what was going on in a thoughtful way, or the world and that type of stuff. And there was okay, oh, we got to do the scene. Okay, action, and then he'd go
Yeah,
do
yeah,
it.
yeah.
So he was a very thoughtful person, very talented, and once again, somebody who just had a really, really good sense of himself. In fact, it was Bernie. I talk about this in my show very briefly, in
Yeah.
the show that I'm doing. That the best advice I ever got was from Bernie Mac, where he simply said, we were this is when I first met him a couple years before I did the show. He said, man, be yourself. you know, I'm like, well, what do you mean? He said, no, man, just be yourself. And he said that like a few times, be yourself.
Yeah.
And just as simple as that was, sometimes it takes a while for all of us to let that sink in because we're so afraid of being judged, and we think whatever it is about us, and someone's not going to like, we're not going to fit into the good group. But the more you understand that it's okay, whoever you are, it doesn't matter, especially when I look at all the issues like that kids have these days of fitting in, because there's so many different ways that they can be different.
Oh
But if you
gosh.
just be yourself, man, when you understand the power of that, it just gives you so much freedom. So hats off, sir, Bernie, for that one.
Hats off, Bernie. Hats off. All right. Tell me about The
Yeah,
Office. I know you were like a writing consultant or something, but you
yeah, I
appeared as
was a
Mr.
producer.
Brown on the Diversity Day episode, which is
Yeah.
freaking one
So
of
The Office, it's so interesting because when we were first doing The Office, we first only had an order of 5 episodes plus the pilot.
yeah.
And no one thought it was going to be any good because there was this show in England called Couplings that they tried to do here in America, and it was a disaster.
Mm.
And it was a big hit in England. So when people heard that they were going to do the same thing to The Office, they're like, oh, this is going to be a disaster. Nobody wants to watch that. And I would tell people, say, Larry, what are you working on these days? I'm working on this new show called The Office. I go, oh yeah, I've heard about that. Good luck. I'm like, no, it's going to be
Yeah.
good.
Because
So
it was Ricky Gervais in the other one, in the
he
original,
was
right?
in the original,
Yeah.
correct. So we were doing it, with the unknown, uh,
Yeah.
n-
Steve
you
Carell.
know, yeah, Steve Carell. For some reason,
Some unknown guy.
people knew Steve from The Daily Show, but 40-Year-Old Virgin hadn't come
Yeah.
out yet. He
I
hadn't
think
done that,
that was
so
the
he
same
wasn't
year.
big. Yes, it did. It came out that summer, I think, after
His
we
chest
aired.
was still not waxed yet.
Yeah. Yeah.
God,
In
Kelly
fact, in
Clarkson.
the first five, he looks different. His face is a
Yeah.
little fuller.
Yeah.
His hair is slicked back. And I think he lost a lot of weight for 40-year-old version. He came back like a little more svelte, and like
Yeah.
this and everything. And then our ratings
Yeah.
increased the second year. But my memory of that is people were like, they were making fun of it. They thought, oh, good luck. They were feeling sorry for me. I'm like, guys, it's gonna be good. I had to defend The Office, and now it's a classic. So
It's
go
one of the
figure.
greatest sitcoms of all time. And Steve Carell and Michael Scott is one of the
So
great
funny.
all-time TV comedy. Hands down. So you were sort of on the ground floor of helping launch that.
Yeah,
That's
very fortunate there.
And
Yeah,
he was also a Daily Show alum, and I want to get to that in a second because I mean
that's
that's what
right.
a lot of people. But while we're sort of on like the sitcom sort of thing, I want to hit really quick two more that
Sure,
you had a huge hand in, which you executive
sure,
produced ABC's Blackish. So you're right there,
sure.
helping Anthony Anderson, Tracy Ellis Ross
I helped launch it. Yeah,
help get that off the ground. And then you
get it off the
co-created with
ground.
Issa Rae HBO's Insecure, which my
That's
wife,
right.
when I told her I was interviewing you, she's like, "That's what show." So yeah, just I know it's hard to combine those two into one
Oh, that's okay. Those
question.
happened
Yeah,
they
just
happened at around the same time, actually. I had met Issa. She had just signed a deal with HBO. She had tried a version of the show at ABC and it didn't quite work out, but HBO really liked her. And she was a young writer. She had produced the web series and they were looking to team her up with somebody. And so when I met her, I'm like, she's brilliant.
yeah.
And I said, why don't we just write this together as a team, rather than me kind of try to
Yeah.
supervise, because that could be a little clanky. and we really hit it off, you know. And the HBO process, it's a really long process. Like they can take years to develop stuff, and it can be so frustrating. So while we were waiting, we had written like 5 or 6 drafts. While we were waiting for HBO to do something, ABC had said, "Hey, we want to do this show, but we need somebody to come in and supervise." And I read Blackish, and it was hilarious. And that's a Kenya Barris' script. So
Yeah.
so I went and we produced the pilot of Blackish, and then that gets picked up, and right at the same time it gets picked up, I get my own show, the Nightly Show.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Overcome. So I had to leave Blackish. I stayed for about 6 months to help get it started. And then had to leave Blackish. And meanwhile, HBO said, you know what, let's do Insecure. I'm like, guys, I had to go do this
All
other. It's
popping
like
at the same
it
time.
all in a year earlier,
Yeah.
Jason, like nothing was happening. That's how showbiz works.
Yeah.
Like nothing was happening. And then the next year, all of that stuff's happening.
Yeah.
But Insecure was so much fun just chiseling away and figuring out how to do that show. And Issa was so smart and just so funny. She had this quality, even like before people had really seen her. It's this, you know, we always call it everyman quality or every woman quality, I guess you could
Yeah,
say,
totally.
you know, girl next door, somebody who you want to be friends with. And I thought that's such a valuable quality to have as a performer. And she was also such a talented writer. It was one of those situations I was just really lucky to be
Yeah.
in that place at that time.
Well, absolutely. I mean, and it was based on that web series, what, like
Yeah.
Awkward Black
Awkward
Girl.
Black
So if that
Girl.
was
The show was not my idea. I'm there to
sure.
help shape it and everything.
Yeah.
No, that's her genius of
Yeah.
coming up with that. And part of that genius for people that are out there interested in those types of things, and I always tell people this, it's very hard to know who you are and how you're being perceived. It's
Mm,
one of the hardest things as an artist. So one of Issa's gifts is was she was able to see that the thing that made her unique was that she was awkward, you know.
mm.
Because Jason, what is the stereotype of the black girl? She was sassy and she would talk like that and she would dress you down and no girl, you know, all that stuff. And she was the opposite. She was like, I don't know, you know what I mean?
Right.
You know, that type of thing. So she embraced the fact that she wasn't the stereotype. She was something different. So believe me, Insecure, that's her genius, not mine. You know,
Yeah.
I'm there trying to help do this, you know, and that type of stuff.
Absolutely. That is great. Embrace the whatever
Right.
makes you unique. I
Your
love it.
uniqueness, always.
Absolutely.
And here's the thing. You're gonna think that nobody cares about my thing. You know, my thing isn't that big a deal. My thing, yes, it is. And the more unique it is, the more specific your story, the more universal it is. When you try
Exactly.
to make your story fit in, the less relatable it is. But when you chisel down on the uniqueness of your story, whatever your story is, by the way, it really doesn't matter. You know, it could be from anywhere. And the more specific you get and the more personal you get to connect with it, that's what it is. I'll give you a little inside thing of what I was doing this weekend. I
I would
was
love to hear it.
yeah, I was doing a version of my show in Las Vegas. And I've been friendly with David Copperfield, you know, and he called me up and said, "Hey man, can we have dinner?" Like, I'm like, "David, I can't have dinner at 11:30. Like it's too late." Like, because you know, he's doing shows. So of course, but you're not gonna say no to David Copperfield. So we're hanging, we're having dinner, but you know, he wanted me to help him like shape this thing that he's working on, the wording of it, you know,
Right.
because he knows I'm good at that type of thing, at clarifying the thing that we were just talking about. And we had such a great time. We spent like 2 hours late at night just having this conversation, the authenticity, unique conversation, and trying to chisel down this thing. And it was so much fun. That's why I was in my head right now, because that process, whenever you do that, and you just get to the root of something. And working with somebody like that, it was awesome because he's like a legend, you know, but we all need to remind ourselves of those lessons. So anybody out there that wants to be a writer or performer, go back to that. Keep it simple, be unique, chisel away. That's my message.
There you go, young listener or old, whatever age listeners, right?
Doesn't matter.
Aspiring creatives. That is the best possible advice you can get. In order to create something eventually universal, it has to start personal.
That's
I
right.
love it. All right. Well,
Personally.
we have, as promised, we do. I know kind of the timelines of this, at least career trajectory, are all like kind of slightly. We're pulp fictioning it a little bit, moving
Yeah.
moving
Yeah.
things around.
I
But we
love
have to get
that.
to the
Yeah.
Daily Show with Jon Stewart because you were the quote
Yes.
senior black correspondent for I don't know, you were there like
Senior
what
Black
70
correspondent. That's
senior by
correct.
the way senior
Senior. Senior
for
Black
like
correspondent.
almost 80 episodes or something crazy. So we've been using sports analogies earlier. You mentioned the Super Bowl, like, but you always hear of like, oh, the Bill Parcells coaching tree led to Belichick, and you know,
Right.
like, but the Jon Stewart coaching tree, if you really want to
Yeah.
call it that, it's unbelievable. Like, like
Yeah,
what was, and he's come on the show before, but like
sure.
what was John's, and is John's, he's still going. What is John's genius in terms of seeing a news event and
Yeah,
within a week, like, a rapid amount of time, turning it around into something that's palatable. It comes across bipartisan, even if it really is kind of a searing. He has a point of view to it,
right.
but I don't know. Like, what's the genius? How does he do that?
Yeah, John's genius is his grit. He doesn't rely on his first instinct for a take. He chips away until he finds a better insight than maybe that first thing you thought about. Because normally the first thing you think about, you'd be surprised a lot of people have that thought. It's when you really chip away and go, what's something more interesting or deeper about this? And that was a huge lesson for me too, because I had done that in dramatic writing, but not in this arena, which is more
Right.
satire, that type of stuff, and to do that on a daily basis. That's why the show was always consistent with John because the standards were so high.
Yeah.
It's you could get laughs right away with the joke, but it's like, yeah, but there's a lot of ways we can get laughs. Let's keep working on this. Let's keep talking about it and get to that. So we could get laughs here or we could get laughs here, and this is a better place to get laughs at when you
Right.
chisel away and find what's the real take on this. What's a better take? What's a more interesting way to look at it? Put my opinion out of it, or my opinion has to guide it here to make
Right.
sure that's the take that I really want. How to in other words, like when I was doing my own show, it's really tough because there's so much pressure. And I had to, this is this how as simple as I kept it. How do I really feel about this?
Yeah.
Like, how do I really feel about this? Does it
Yeah.
make me sick? Does it confuse me?
Yeah.
Am I happy about it? And once you have that, chisel away. Don't worry about how anybody else thinks about it. Focus on that, and that will guide you through the piece.
That's you're just dropping great advice for any aspiring writer or
But
comedian.
if you watch John's pieces, you'll understand what I'm talking about because he'll have a point of view that guides him through it. And usually it's emotionally based, like disgust or bewilderment, or, usually with John, he wants justice in this. That's usually his thing because he has a lot of
Yeah.
that. He wants something to be fair. Like John has a lot of that thing. So
That's
usually that's what's guiding him through it. Like there's a lot of bullshit in here. And I'm pointing out this shit isn't fair. Like most of John's pieces have that in it. So he's coming from an indignant point of view most of the time.
Yeah, you can see that. And even like some of the nine, and that carries over into like the 9/11 first responder stuff. He's like seeking
That's
justice.
right.
And
There's there's an injustice
they're
there.
here. I'm going to show you this Fox News clip where they're BSing you or
Right.
MSNBC, whatever. But yeah, like, and but he seeks that strain of justice in there. And I think that's
What's
why he was
fair?
our voice. You're going to say I'm crazy for saying this, but for
Yeah.
people, I was born in 84. So for my generation, and this is going to sound ridiculous, but he was like our Walter Cronkite. That
Yeah,
sounds
for
like
sure.
it sounds like hyperbole, but it's really not. His interview skills are top notch too. So
Oh, top notch. I agree. They're not comedian interview skills
yeah.
at all.
It's
He
like,
has
oh, if
real
what
good
was it? If
journalistic skills.
yeah,
Yeah,
journalist, absolutely. And it was like, what was it? If they lost Cronkite, they lost the Vietnam War. If we
that's
lost
right.
John Stewart, you lost the Iraq War. I'm sorry, it really, he's a voice for a generation. But you are too, though. So like the nightly show with Larry Wilmore, you alluded to it on Comedy Central comes.
Yes.
You start that in what 2015? That was to replace.
2015, we
That
were
was to
on for a
replace the
year and a
Colbert
half.
Report, right? It was to replace the Colbert
Yes,
when he left to replace Letterman on the Late Show. So
that's right.
and John Oliver's doing Last Week Tonight around the same time too. So like there you had
That's
like
right.
three Daily Show alums all going at it. But yeah, like how big of an honor or was it was it intimidating to know that like Colbert had created this such a big character that they literally offered him his own show? Like what was your feelings going into that time slot? Was it pressure or were you like, I've done everything in TV, I'll be all
Well,
right?
it was, but not from the standpoint of I have to carry a show. Because remember, like even before I did the Daily Show, I had already won an Emmy, like
Yeah,
doing the Bernie Mac show, and I'd won many awards as a showrunner. So to me, the challenge is what is the show more so than I have a show.
yeah, yeah,
So the pressure at that point was like, what is this show?
yeah, yeah.
And I wanted to distinguish myself from Colbert because he had done like a character, he had kind of done this absurdist, like play thing. So I wanted to do the opposite of that and keep it real. And so I came up with, guys, my show's about let's keep it 100% real, keeping it 100. That became the mantra on the show. We even had a game on it where people had to keep it 100, And so once I figured that out, that became it. And we talked about race in ways which they still don't talk about it that way in TV, and I'm very proud of. I actually went down to Baltimore and met with a gang, that was involved in they had there was a riot or something like there, and I took them out to a restaurant and bought them some pie.
Really? I love it.
Yeah. And I asked them, what's going on here, guys? And it was like a real gang. And we were just hanging out and everything at this restaurant, and we had conversations like that in the show. Some dangerous, some just absurd. But we hit race head on. And I still get people, I won't lie to you, to this day, people say, man, Larry, we really missed those conversations. We missed that show that you guys did that. But it was very different. It took us a while to build up what our show was in audience, because Colbert was, I mean, he was a legend in that space,
Yeah. Yeah.
And a lot of his fans saw us and like, what is this? This is not Colbert. We're going to watch something else. I'm like, sorry, I can't be Steven. Nobody can.
And he can't be you either. You're your own level of genius. You know what I mean? He couldn't have gone and sat and had pie with the gang in Baltimore. Well, maybe he could have. You never know.
It's a different approach. He would have an absurdist conversation.
Right.
I'm having a real conversation.
Right.
But I'm using my point of view to make it funny, offering them pie, see if they're still hungry, that type of thing.
Yeah, exactly.
While we're having a conversation about somebody looting or that type of stuff, or protecting people or whatever it was.
Exactly. You both are like legends in my mind.
Oh, thank you.
Well, so I guess then that's sort of, during that period, I wanted to ask you about hosting that White House Correspondents' Dinner. What was that?
Oh, sure.
2016. So that would have been, if my memory is correct, I guess 5 years earlier was the weekend I'll never forget with the Correspondents' Dinner, where Obama was, remember, roasting Trump in the audience. Remember?
Yeah,
and
Seth Meyers.
I'll never forget. It was the birther lie. The birth certificate was like just happening. I think like on a Friday, Obama dropped the birth certificate. Like Saturday, he roasted him at the Correspondents' Dinner, and Sunday he killed bin Laden. Like it was like, so while you're out there saying, oh, he wasn't born here, he's like organizing SEAL Team 6 to go have an all-time, payback for 9/11. So that, and yet the other guy we've seen what has happened with him. Like, he just rose to this crazy cultish figure. Do you want to comment on that one Correspondents' Dinner? Because that moment of the birther bin Laden thing, and then the fact that you're 5 years later, you're hosting it and he's the president. Like, is there any kind of dramatic through line we can create there?
Right. Well, when I hosted Obama's last one, and the one you're talking about, Seth Meyers hosted it, and Seth actually, because Trump was in the audience there, and Seth eviscerated Trump. He did all the Trump. I think Obama might have done one joke about him,
like at the end.
I think he did. I don't know if he did a meatloaf joke or something like that. Because he was really slamming The Apprentice or something like that. And but it was hilarious. And so my first joke was something like, "Welcome to the White House Correspondents' Dinner," or if they're gonna call it next year. And I made a joke about Trump being president. I can't remember the words that it said. And of course, everybody laughs because nobody thought at that time. Like, he didn't even have the nomination then. Yeah. Nobody thought there was even a chance in hell Trump would be president. So here I am saying it as a joke. And sure enough, the very next year, Trump was president. So that time was so surreal, and having the opportunity to do that, it was very cool, but it's very surreal too, doing Correspondents' Dinner.
Yeah, and seeing everything that's happened. Awesome. Well, final seconds. In addition to the Birchmere show, anything you want to plug the podcast? Larry Wilmore Black on the Air.
Yeah. So if you're in the New York area on October 11th, I'll be at City Winery. Of course, Birchmere here on the 14th. Come on out to the Birchmere, guys. It's going to be so much fun. Yeah. And then I'll be in Philly on the 17th and Chicago on the 18th. So it's a little mini tour. We're talking about America, but we're doing some magic and some stuff that's really gonna make people go, what? And of course, you can hear me every week on Larry Wilmore Black on the Air, my podcast. We have some really cool guests on there. A lot of different types of people, from politics to culture to comedy, the arts, everything you can think of.
I love it. That's part of the Bill Simmons, like the Ringer Network.
The Ringer Network, yeah. You can find me there. Yeah. Well, thanks for having me on.
Thank you so much. This is fantastic. This was a great, look at the whole career as much as we could fit in, a short amount of time. I appreciate it.
Thank you. Pleasure is all mine. See you guys out there at the Birchmere. Come on out.
Come on out, everybody. Thanks, man.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
Thanks so much for listening to Beyond the Fame with Jason Fraley. Our theme music is Scott Buckley's Clarion. Remember to give us a 5-star rating if you like what you hear. We'll see you next time.